What's going on, Imperials? It's Emperor Cubone here. What better way to celebrate a new pair of remakes than to take a look back on the system on which they were based? But the DS wasn't only for Gen 4, we also saw Gen 5 as well, giving us one of the most praised stories in all of Pokémon. However, that doesn't mean that the old dual screens were flawless, so let's examine what it was like back in the day with my top 6 problems with the DS era of Pokémon. Number 6. Pacing. Let's just address this one first. The Sinnoh games are notoriously slow. Not from a creative perspective, but in just about everything they do. The text speed, every time a Pokémon uses an attack, even just the simple animations that must play at the start of every battle. This can be overlooked since you can get used to it after playing for a while, but it's not just the actual visuals that are off. The pacing of the story seems a bit haphazard as well. You pass through 2 towns to get to the first gym, then backtrack, go to another town, complete the Valley Windworks and Eterna Forest quests just to get to the second gym, and then in Diamond and Pearl you go through a mountain and 2 more towns just to get to the third gym. Now, I'm not complaining about alternating between gyms and major story beats, but I will complain when it all seems to be crammed into the beginning. Once you get to the 4th gym, you'll already have been to 3/4 of the region, and of the 4 towns left to visit, 3 of them are gym locations. I guess they just stopped caring about adding extra bonuses as the deadline grew closer? And again, this is not a Sinnoh exclusive, since the Unova games are guilty of lopsided narrative structuring as well, leaving certain portions of the gameplay to give you 2 or 3 gym badges in about an hour after waiting forever. And of course, we all know that the pacing of leveling up Pokémon in Johto is egregious, so this even hits Heart Gold and Soul Silver. It's not that it makes these games unplayable, but it does mean that the entire DS stable of mainline Pokémon has wild inconsistencies as far as pedal to the metal versus a monotonous slog. Number 5. The Pokedexes. So we already know about the severe shortcomings of the initial Diamond and Pearl decks, so that's not really what I'm focusing on. Although it doesn't help much even if you do have Heart Gold and Soul Silver to trade, since you still can't get fire types early enough to make a difference. One of the main problems to me was the barring of all the cool new evolutions that they added at the end of the decks. Outside of a select few, you couldn't use any of the fancy enhancements gifted to old Pokémon until the post-game. Granted, this was changed in Platinum, allowing us for the opportunity, as well as offering greater variety, but those weren't the only problems on the DS Pokédexes. Black and White are quite famous for pulling a reboot and having a completely new dex at the start of the generation. This is kind of nice since we aren't inundated with the same old Pokémon that they always seem to reuse, but that temporary respite results in long-term confusion as to why they created multiple Pokémon twice. This also led to a bloat of the new Pokémon to the highest amount we've ever seen and probably will ever see. But aside from the cutoff simply rubbing people the wrong way, it also made it a lot harder to complete the national decks when you couldn't get any lead-in, requiring you to transfer most all of the previous 400 Pokémon, which necessitates a second DS. It may not be the worst thing, but when you have trouble constructing even a basic team, it can become a little grating. Number 4. Honey. Honey is a free browser extension— no, I'm kidding, nobody wants to sponsor this channel. But seriously, outside of Fog, one of the absolute worst parts of Generation 4 was the honey tree mechanic. I'll be honest, for the most part, Pokémon made pretty great use of the DS technology when they joined the system. You no longer had to set time in-game since it simply took the data from your DS clock. The potential for wireless communications was a huge leap forward, allowing people to trade or battle hassle-free, even to the point of doing so with strangers across the globe through Wi-Fi. Even the microphone came into play occasionally, so I guess they thought that honey would be a good idea, but I don't see how they were so far off. Slathering honey on a tree to get rare Pokémon could have been cool, but why did they make us wait 6 hours? Even if you used the honey right when you got home at 3 o'clock or so, that means that you'd have to wait until 9 PM to see if anything happened. So you'll either forget and get sidetracked for dinner or homework or something, or if you have played the game in that time, you'll be several hours away from where you tried to lure a Pokemon in the first place. So there's really no good way to even try this until late in the game, unless you just want to take giant pauses in your gameplay to maybe get a chance to find a Pokemon that you could have found in the grass anyway. Number 3. Redundancies. This might sound strange, but the DS system, for all of its many improvements, such as general enhancements and game mechanics, I mean, they gave us the physical special split after all, also seems like maybe they were spinning their wheels a bit. Gen 4 is one of my favorites of all time. I love each of these games, but let's look at some things. Gen 3 brought in Pokemon contests, a great new way to interact with your beloved pocket monsters if you're not a fan of battling. This was a big part of the Hoenn identity, but then Sinnoh just did the same thing. They did add in some dancing, but other than that, it's pretty much the same. I'm not complaining that they offer variety, but it is a bit strange that they didn't try to make their own way. And then they did the same thing when they brought back double battles and included the Battle Frontier. Again, it was most welcome to see these additions on the newer hardware, but they were simply up-resed versions of last gen's surprises. Just about the only unique thing that Sinnoh added was the underground feature, which was fantastic and did make great use of the new system that they had. But Gen 5 has nothing like that. They maybe expanded with triple battles and rotation battles, and changed the contest to musicals or some such nonsense, but none of that is really tied to the more advanced hardware. It's just kind of a shame that they got rid of their one innovation, and then the best they could come up with is to repeat the same beats as before, despite having much better tools to play with. Now you might say that every Pokemon game does the same thing, but at least on the next system, it puts its own stamp on things with new mechanics, but we'll talk more about those next time. Number 2. Downgrades. So this will no doubt be one of the least popular opinions, but I still cannot believe how big of a downgrade the Generation 5 games are from Gen 4. Now, for anyone that hasn't already rage quit, let me explain. I don't mean that the Unova games are inferior in their narrative in any way, nor do I really mean on the Pokemon themselves. Although, to be fair, Unova does see the most repeated ideas of any generation out there, but that's not what I mean. I am specifically referring to the way these games look. Ever since they came out, I have felt that Black and White are aesthetically worse than Diamond and Pearl. To me, one of the most glaring examples is the simple tree. In Gen 4, they are pleasant at all angles and gracefully shift around as your walk changes their perspective. In Gen 5, they're a pixelated mess that somehow appear flatter than the games that were 4 years prior. I'm not one to be a snob about graphics, but this is about the DS system itself. How can they take the exact same hardware and seem to make every choice worse off than they did last time? If you don't know why I'm harping on this, look no further than the Pokémon sprites. Many fans are diehard sprite supporters, saying that we should go back, but if they look like Gen 5, I'd rather not. Every single Pokémon looks so grainy in their movements, like their pixels weren't designed to be seen on anything more than a Game Boy Color. I know that the movements weren't as in-depth in Gen 4, but tell me that when a Pokémon hops around in Platinum, it doesn't look better. And what's even worse is certain camera motions that zoom in and show the back sprites far closer than normal, showing you just how off these models are. This may sound petty, but it's hard for me to get over the fact that the newer games on the system seem to struggle with basic gameplay to the point where even the tiny player sprite appears strained at times. Number 1. Everlasting Holes. Despite the underground, we are not talking about real holes in the earth, nor are we even talking about the giant chasm. No, here we need to discuss the fact that certain parts of these games, if played today, will be missing and will continue to be for all time. That's not to say that Pokemon hasn't had exclusive parts before, but back in Gen 1, Mew was really only obtainable by a glitch for most people. Gen 2's only real big event was basically a Japan exclusive, so most of the world never knew the difference. And yes, Gen 3 had events for Deoxys and other legendary Pokemon, but these were locked away until after you successfully downloaded the trigger. the DS changed this substantially by rubbing it in our faces every time there was a little secret. I get the idea. They wanted to provide a little tease, but this works much better when it's simply a delayed secret instead of one that may not be there at all. For example, in Heart Gold and Soul Silver, there is a Celebi event, similar to the one from Crystal, but this time actually taking you through time to see your rival's past and fight Giovanni so that he doesn't return to Team Rocket. Temporally speaking, this always happened, so it assumes that you will go back in time to take part in those events at some point. But if you play it now, it will never happen. This exclusive Celebi is the only way to start the event. And hey, maybe you kept it on a Gen 4 game, but we were actively incentivized not to do so by Gen 5. Here, the exact same Celebi was required to access another event of a weird kid that turned out to be a Zorua. This kid is in the game regardless, but if you didn't get that lucky mythical, it'll just be a mystery that you'll never understand. There will forever be a child suffering from nightmares because you can never go and catch Darkrai. You'll never understand what the weird rock in Pledge Grove is for because you didn't get that event Keldeo. So, say what you will about just dropping off gifts at the Pokémon Center, but at least that way there aren't gaping holes in the story of the game that can never be recovered. I get that you want to reward players in the moment, but this radical strategy actively discourages people from revisiting these games now, and unfortunately it has never been more prominent than when Pokémon was on the DS. But we'll see how those remakes will shake out. So, those are my top 6 problems with Pokémon on the DS. What are your problems with the DS era of Pokémon? Let me know down in the comments. Also be sure to leave a like, share this video, and subscribe so that you too can become an Imperial today. And we'll see you around next time!